Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the HerStoryTV and the Her Story podcast. This is your host here, Getrude, Matshe, in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Now, a lot of you will be surprised to see a man gracing the stages of the Her Story platform. But I told you 25% of all of our contributors to this content are male. Why are we doing this? You know, when we started, we were focused strictly on women until the sons, the husbands, the nephews of these women started asking if they could come and play with us. And we live in a world full of men and women. I have sons. We opened up our platform to as many enlightened men as we could find. And I would love you to introduce yourself. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. Tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Fantastic. Gertrude, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be on your platform and this podcast. And good day. Welcome to your listeners. My name is Conor O'Malley. I am a Scot with an Irish name and an English accent and based in Melbourne on Boon Wurrung country in Melbourne. How old am I? There's an interesting question I haven't been asked in ages. I'm 55 years of age, 56 in December. And what's my story? From a professional perspective, unless I was the CEO of a multi-million or multi-billion dollar organization, I felt that my career was not a success. And I will honestly say that at times stood me in great stead, and at other times clearly not, having such a binary notion of what success looks like. Over 4 years ago, stepped out of that executive leadership journey and now work as an executive coach, as an author, and also, I am told, as an ally for women in leadership, which is certainly an area that you and I have discussed, and it's a privilege to be here.
Absolutely wonderful. So, Conor, your journey obviously started back in your homeland in the United Kingdom, and then you came over to Australia. But for the purposes of this interview, where are we going to pick one of those little nuggets, those stories of your life that have led you to this path?
I think the story that I would love to share is a journey of perhaps self-discovery. In terms of what is this notion of success, I say in my coaching practice and in life now that we live in our stories and our stories live in us. Now, what does that mean? By us living in our stories at the cognitive domain, it's the narrative that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves what is true. We tell ourselves what is so. But actually, very little of what is true and what is so are actually facts. They're really assessments and beliefs and narratives that we overlay on the facts. So it is true that in 2006, I, along with Paula, my wife, and our two children, Sean and Charlotte, came to Australia with our black dog, Lulu, our Labrador, who no longer is with us, unfortunately. That's a fact. The reason that I came and we came to Australia is an assessment in terms of what an opportunity, where's my career going, how can we, change our life, and those become narratives. So I think for our listeners today, it's this notion of us living in our stories and the distinction of what is so, but actually, do these stories serve us well? And in my case, I would certainly say that having that distinction of what success looked like, being a CEO of an organization, that was my measure of success. Ultimately, I'm saying didn't serve me well.
It's good that you found that out, because now you're on this path. Women in leadership is your passion. Why women in leadership?
Leadership is changing, Gertrude. So I'm going to start with the notion that leadership in of itself is changing, and that's certainly from a professional perspective my passion. And I think it's, in my view, and I'm spoken about this publicly, written about this, that it's changing in two core ways. One is at the most senior level of organizations, that those leaders must now be leaders not only of their business but also in society.
Right.
That is because the traditional avenues of where the society trusts and puts its trust in media or the church or the state, I think that's dissipating. And more and more, and certainly, you know, the Edelman Trust Barometer is a classic example of this, where data is showing that we, as in society, want to place our leaders, our trust in those leaders. So there is a greater reason for senior leaders of business to be leaders in society as well as of their business. And if you look at the consumer patterns of why, you know, we tend to choose certain organizations to shop in or buy from, there is, again, growing data that shows that the consumer wants, you know, organizations who have a view to their impact on the environment and or of society, and therefore the leaders must be of that ilk. So that's one area, and having more women in more senior positions can only support the importance of those senior leaders being leaders in society. Because funny old thing, let's say it's at least 50-50 if we take it purely from a binary gender perspective, and I appreciate there's a great deal more complexity than purely a binary perspective on gender, so I acknowledge that. But in the context of this, it is so important to have more women at more senior levels in business to be leaders in society as well as of their business. So that's the first one. And the second one around leadership is the way in which leaders are more effective is changing as well. So it's less, let's say, my way or the highway. It's less autocratic. It's more curiosity. It's more empathy. It's more listening. It's more co-creation. And in my experience and view, having more women in positions of leadership will turbocharge those elements of leadership which are now critical today. That's why I'm passionate about women in leadership.
Most of those aspects that you've just mentioned are very innate in women. They come very naturally. You know, collaboration, connection, empathy is something that we are just wired to be. And you're right, there is a need for an injection of feminine energy in most organizations right now. And especially in this changing time.
Absolutely. There's a great saying from a lady called Deborah Tannen, who wrote a book called "You Just Don't Understand." And if I can quote one part of it that really resonated for me, is her assertion is that men talk in report talk and women talk in rapport talk. And I thought that's a lovely distinction in terms of you mentioned the energy and the different way of being that women, you know, in leadership bring to organizations. There's a small example of what I think we're talking about. And we need both. You know, it's not one or the other. It's both. Yes,
definitely. Now, you wrote a book on trust.
That's right.
It's called Trust Begins and Ends with Self. Let's delve a little bit into trust and leadership and what your perspective of trust is all about.
No problem. At a headline level, I believe that trust is delivering on your commitments to self and others consistently. Delivering on your commitments to self and others consistently. So for me, it's a verb rather than a noun. If we then want to take it to another level of what are the elements of trust, you know, how can I break trust down? I talk about the risk factors of trust. So reliable, is the person or thing reliable? And they're assessments. So I go back to this notion of what are facts and what are assessments and beliefs. These are assessments that we have to make of a person or a thing if we choose to trust that person or thing. So is the person or thing reliable? Then am I invested in that person? And the S is sincerely. So it's like a deeper level. We've got to look inside of ourselves and ask ourselves, am I invested in you? And if I'm not invested in you, how on earth is there going to be an outcome of trust? No chance. And then it's like, okay, am I sincerely invested in you? So that's the I and the S. And then the three C's in the risk factors of trust are consistency. So do I do it consistently? it being reliable, it being deliver on my commitments. I have to be consistent in my behavior. And then the other two are really interesting ones. I think they're interesting ones. One is competency and the other is capacity. So let's say we want to give somebody in a work situation, in a leadership situation, something to do. Well, if I assess you're not competent to do it, why on earth would I ask you to do it? It's gonna go wrong. It's gonna go belly up. There is not going to be an outcome of trust. And then even more at another level. So yes, I believe you are capable. You have the competency to do it. I'll ask you to do it. Well, have you got the capacity? And how many leaders, men and women, give somebody something to do because they believe they've got the competency, but what they don't do, and I believe this is equally applicable to men and women, because I think it's not well thought through for both genders, is has the person got the capacity? The classic straw that broke the camel's back. We all know this. I'll give it to a busy person, it'll get it, that person will get it done. Great. But eventually, using two metaphors, the straw will break the camel's back. So from a leadership perspective and trust, we have a responsibility not only to say, does the person have the competency, but do they have the capacity? And if they don't, well, what can I do to help you? Can I reprioritize what it is I'm asking you to do? Can I take something off you? Can I ask somebody else to do something for you so you can do this? That's what good leadership is about. And quite frankly, that's applicable to both men and women.
That's wonderful. Now, diversity and inclusion is one of my passion projects, my focus. As a white middle-aged male,
yes,
how do you think men should be reacting, responding in bringing about change in the corporate world? A lot of women, regardless of color, race, gender, struggle to get to those positions in most corporate organizations.
Indeed.
The white male has got a privilege there.
Yes.
Always has and probably always will. And these are positions that are protected. There's a lot of fear around letting go and allowing women to come and sit in those seats. Give me your take on what can be changed and how men can start bringing about change in their organizations at that front.
It's a privilege to answer this question. One word that emerges immediately is the notion of allyship. And my understanding, my reading, which is a critical part of the notion of allyship, is standing in the other person's shoes as best you can. So my direct answer to is, well, there's two things that I believe are critical to this notion of allyship. The first is self-recognition. Now, you have presented to me, and I absolutely agree with you, white middle-aged male, and I've shared with you, from a career perspective, arguably successful on some people's measure at a senior leadership. So yes, I have the privilege to have been privileged to get to the place that I was. Now, I would not have seen that privilege in the way that I do now. So the first element of allyship is understanding that you have been and are in a position of privilege relative to those. And I'll use this word, and I hope it's not too grating, but I believe it's appropriate in the conversation around allyship, and the word is marginalized. It is a word in my reading of the privilege that one feels to serve, support, be with those who feel marginalized. In this context, women not being as much in leadership as they can be and should be means they're marginalized, as opposed to Black Lives Matter or as opposed to gender, marginalization in gender. So staying in women in leadership space, that
Yes.
word allyship. So I recognize that, and it's a new recognition for me, and it's emerging. The second one is that all my understanding around the notion of allyship is you cannot say you are an ally. It has to be conferred upon you by others who see you as supporting their space of marginalization and or their cause. So to be in the position where that may be the case is humbling and privileged. So those two are critical to allyship. Then it's, what do you do? Well, a key element is learning, is understanding the position of the group to which you feel you are, or somebody says you are, an ally. And I hope me being with you and learning from you and being part of Her Story, I hope is demonstration of me wanting to learn and soak up and immerse myself in a space that I've not previously been in.
Yeah.
It is then doing I talked about trust and the word consistent in trust. So linked to this notion of what are the small things that anybody who feels that they are in the privileged position to support those who are marginalized, what are the small things we can do every day consistently? Yeah. So call out inappropriate language. We can listen, simply listen. We can ask somebody, how are you doing, and hear their story. We can have our voice heard. And so for me, this is me to a degree, I hope, having my voice heard through the opportunity you're providing me. We can create forums. So as you know, Gertrude, there's work that you and I are doing with a leadership in business in Melbourne, where I've invited a number of women to share stories, and specifically around a topic which is my presentation on your conference around influencing and presence. So instead of only saying I'm going to not only but provide you that presentation for your listeners, well, hey, let's get together an amazing group of leaders in Melbourne who happen to be women and provide that opportunity to share stories and learn from each other. Well, make no mistake, I'll be learning too. Gosh, there's so much more, but I hope that gives you my answer to and my passion around this space of allyship. And here's another thing that in my reading and understanding is making mistakes. So if I've said anything inadvertently today that doesn't resonate well, then I've said it from a place of care. I've said it from a place of passion, and I'm happy to be called out on it, because we can make mistakes and we learn from those mistakes and we move on. But hey, recognizing the position of privilege to then be able to serve others who themselves feel marginalized, my friend, that's what it's about.
That's absolutely wonderful. Now, you coach and you mentor women in the leadership space.
That's true.
What 3 nuggets of wisdom could you give to somebody right now who's feeling like they've hit that glass ceiling, they're frustrated, they can't break through? 3 nuggets of wisdom that you could share for somebody in that position.
The first is influence, which I just mentioned earlier on. So influencing is critical in terms of being heard and wanting to add value to others in an organization. And my work is in leadership, so I'm going to stay in that domain of leadership and business as opposed to more broadly. I feel comfortable talking there. So this idea that influencing is not about me, it's about somebody else. So how can I serve somebody by influencing them? How can I provide them my wisdom? And by finding your voice to be in service to somebody else, as opposed to trying to convince or persuade, that I hope is one nugget. Another one is which is in the paper that I've submitted for the Her Story conference, is around this idea, and this may well be challenging, that there is no such thing as a difficult conversation. Okay. Challenging statement, and it's the title of my submission for the conference. Right. And what do I mean by that is, well, what is a difficult conversation? Who's it difficult for? Well, typically we say it's difficult for me. Okay, well, I could argue, and I do argue, well, that's quite, taking the conversation is all about me. Ooh, really? Isn't a conversation about 2 people? Oh, really? Isn't a conversation about an outcome? Isn't a conversation about how we can co-create something, or how I can share something with you that will serve you? So let's even go to arguably one of the most difficult conversations for men or women, a conversation for performance in leadership. Gertrude, unfortunately, the standard of work that you're providing me, it's not where we want it to be. Yeah, that's a challenging conversation. Yes. But actually, am I serving you by not having that conversation? I want to help you. I want to support you, improve your performance. So the conversation's for you and about you. So why do I call it difficult? I want to make sure I know why I'm having that conversation and what the outcome is. So there are ways that we can structure our language such that it's not per se a difficult conversation. So that's the second one. And what's the third one I would share in the context of this conversation? Goodness me, you've got me on the spot. You've got me on the spot. Let's talk about this notion of which I do know from my conversations through mentoring and coaching with women specifically. So again, I feel difficult sharing this because it sounds, it's more for women than for men. I'm saying this because of my experience that it is so, as opposed to I'm saying it is so. And that is about perfectionism, 100% versus 80% or 70%. So I know there's this kind of whole, TED Talk world of fake it till you make it. And whoever does I think it's a lady does her TED Talks now. I'm not going to that space. But what I am going to is, in my experience, women feel that they need to be more 100%, 90% before they'll take action, before they'll speak up, before they'll say something. And the typical bloke, and let's then go white, middle-aged bloke, will kind of bluff it out and bluster it. Now, there's a halfway house there that the person who bluffs it out and blusters it maybe needs to hold back a wee bit and actually be more self-aware and going, really, is this so? And take accountability for what that person's saying. But what I am also saying is the nugget of, please, if this resonates with you and you happen to be a woman listening to this, you kind of don't need to get to that 95%. Go for the 90, go for the 85, and be curious and be courageous and possibly be vulnerable, and it will be fine.
I love that, because a lot of times, and I found this from personal experience, the glass ceiling is more of the story that we tell ourselves.
For sure.
And the perception that we have that there's a limit as to how far we can go within organizations. Like I've had people say to me, how did you get that job? I just felt I deserved it. I felt I had the skills to do it. And I've always had the sense that I will put myself forward. And if they interview me and take me on, they will see my potential. They'll see my shortfalls. They'll train me if there is anything else I need to learn.
Indeed.
And so the ceiling is more in your mind than anywhere else. And I think right now organizations are more open, more willing. 20, 30 years ago, when I went into the corporate world, it was a completely different story. I was always a minority. I was in an IT team with males, and the world has changed. So I'm really excited to see the space that women are having to operate in now. So you're going to be running a workshop at the Her Story Online Summit. Give us a bit of an idea of what you'll be sharing there.
Well, that workshop, I think, is going to emerge out of the feedback I get from the conference, Gertrude. So I'm going to answer that by saying I remain curious. I want to make sure that workshop serves the needs of what emerges from the conference. And I'm comfortable to go with that curiosity. So let's see what comes out of the Q&A and any feedback that we get from the conference. I know the workshops follow the conference. So yes. I'm happy to be led by the audience on that one, Gertrude.
That is fantastic. That's awesome, because I've run workshops with no agenda in the past, where I literally rely on the people who are coming to the workshop to put forward their questions, their comments, their thoughts. It kind of leaves you a nice open slate, and you're going to deliver really appropriate content to what's needed.
Indeed. I don't know if it'll be that fluid. I think we'll have to go in with something, but I think what I'm hoping out of this conference to both provide insights and in some way, I hope to provide some leadership support and in service of those who attend the conference in that space of business leadership. And I'm pretty sure that a theme will emerge through you that we can explore and put something together that will really add value and serve those who follow up from the conference.
Fantastic. Conor, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely awesome interview. So looking forward to meeting you in person, hopefully, here in Melbourne.
Indeed.
Everything kind of unravels again. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in, wherever you are in the world. The Her Story platform is open to having men come and share their insights, their ideas, to play with us and share with us their knowledge and their skills. So do register to speak at the Her Story Online Summit. We still have a few slots left, or register to attend. It's going to be a fascinating summit on the 27th to the 26th of September 2021. And Conor, thank you again for this amazing interview. Wonderful to reconnect with
absolute pleasure. And you too, Gertrude. And good evening to, listeners all around the world. So we hope you stay safe and well, and truly acknowledge that these are challenging times for all of us globally. And, we're here to support you in some way through this conference.
Wonderful. Bye, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.